So, I can't think of a marketeer that doesn't want to, do attribution better or be able to attribute more accurately. But for those that perhaps aren't doing it as well as they could do, then how should they go about it?
So I'm actually, I don't go completely mental about data and tracking everything you can really, but I typically I talk about a framework of what is it? So first of all, you need to have a story. Why are we doing these marketing activities and how are they actually going to result in producing more revenue? Then secondly, you need to test that story against people in your company. Go to your sales team and tell this story. We're going to do these things because we expect X, Y, Z. Go to your CEO, go to your CMO and explain these things to is it waterproof that this thing should correlate with us producing more demand or producing more revenue? If the story holds up against these things, then it's about going out and trying it out in the real world. When you start doing these things, then hopefully, or I think if you want to put a lot of money into it, then you need to start building statistical proof, data proof that this is actually working as you said it would be working. Now, sometimes that comes in a quantitative form, meaning that you bought 1,000 clicks and then you had these demo calls and then we sold. Other times it comes in a qualitative form, like somebody comment, like who can recommend me a attribution software, and then somebody writing dream data or something like that. So what I mean is that not everything is like super quantifiable, but then you need to use like the qualitative things, like, there's a lot of people talking about this self-reported attribution as well. And then if you run a podcast like you do, Matt, then it's hard to measure that podcast inside of Google Analytics. So a way to maybe understand it is to say, how did you hear about us? And then some people would write your podcast. But it's your responsibility as a marketer to provide proof that what am I doing? Why is it producing revenue? And if this is the data that kind of backs up what I'm saying. What we do at Dream Data is predominantly trying to understand the quantifiable parts of attribution. There's stuff that you can't measure. You meet somebody at a conference, he recommends a piece of software, stuff going on in Slack channel, all these things that some define as dark social. Can't measure it. It's still valuable. So that's why you want to use a platform like ours as a statistical framework, trying to get as much information as you can as possible available, and then run that by your gut feeling as well, and maybe some qualitative proof, and then you have a good cocktail for scaling or stopping activities.
And should that apply? I mean, there's obviously a big shift here from not a big shift, but there's a lot of talk and noise in the market about lead generation versus demand generation. Does that apply for both then?
That discussion, is hard to spend a lot of time on B2B marketing on LinkedIn without seeing that discussion. I think sometimes it becomes all a bit too theoretical, because at the end of the day, if you have proof that these leads that you bring in are parts of deals that you win, that's a good, who cares? I understand the conceptual part of, there's some people where you do demand capture. That's people searching, I want to buy X piece of software. And then there's demand generation, where you get in front of people who looks like your ideal customer profile, and then you run ads, and then they come and do the demand capturing activities. What I can say, of course, is that lead generation, collecting emails, can be, misleading if it's not measured up against, these leads actually worth anything? And I think, that's when you don't have like a holistic view of your pipeline. If you don't know of X amount of leads, who of them are actually marketing qualified, who's acceptable by leads, who actually goes into the sales qualified pipeline, and how many do you win? And I think marketers needs to care a lot about the average conversions from every stage. So if you have to produce X amount of deals 6 months from now, how many leads do you need to convert today? And then you need to know the conversion rate of every single pipeline stage to get there. So you need to be able to reverse engineer the demand needed from revenue down to kind of how many leads do you collect. I mean, like if it's just about, collecting leads, you can just run cat videos on Facebook, and then you have a long list of email addresses, but that's probably not going to translate into sales acceptable leads, etc.
But I mean, you do joke, but there are companies out there that are focused totally on MQLs. It's about this quarter, we've got to generate 1,000 MQLs for the company, no matter what that MQL is. And then on the other hand, you've got marketeers who are kind of splitting the funnel a bit. So looking at the MQL and not categorizing it as just one thing, actually what was the source of that MQL, and then running those two sort of against each other to see which is the better performing in terms of revenue generation rather than just getting an MQL. But
yeah, exactly. And I think that, but it's so much of this comes down to marketers taking responsibility for like doing valuable stuff. And my best advice is always to, if you can, walk into the sales room, talk to the salespeople. Who do you like talking to? Which seem to kind of convert easier to sales, etc. Like it's when you think about it, there's just one customer journey, and it's not rocket science that if you put in crap in terms of really bad leads, nothing comes out of it. If you really understand who's going to be happy about your product, who's easy to sell to, who has the budget, etc., and you put in that kind of stuff into your machine, then everybody's probably going to be happier at the end of the day.